Welcome to this very special edition of the Armstrong Williams Show. Nhiya Cunningham is a student at Howard University, as well as Trinity Kinslow. And they're about to tell a story that is so hidden under the radar, so threatening. And I know many parents across the country who have, your child is in school, whether you've heard it from them or heard it from others, you know this story. You know, Howard University here in Washington, D.C. is an open campus. It doesn't have the high security gates that many of these universities have. It doesn't have the sophisticated security system. And while a few of them may carry guns and tasers, you'd be shocked at how threatened and vulnerable these campuses have become, especially to young women. Let me start with you, Nhiya. Paint a picture for us. It's one thing to feel the pressure, the academic pressure of facing your professors, going to the library, preparing to give the best defense, to study and pass your examinations, your tests. But there are other issues that you as a student who pays so much money to Howard University, you should not have to deal with.
Well, as a commuting student to Howard University, for one, I have to deal with locking my steering wheel when I park so that I don't have to worry about somebody carjacking my car. Two, I have to worry about crossing the street onto Georgia Ave over to SLB and worry about whether or not a student is going to run up to me, well, a non-student is going to run up to me and stab me in my back or try to take my purse away from me that only has books and zero funding in it.
How long has this been going on?
This has been going on all school year long.
And I'm sure, Trinity, you've complained to the administration, you've complained to the security, and are you telling me they're incapable? Even before you answer that, Trinity, talk about the things that you've experienced inside the dorm, people being stabbed 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yes, security around the residential dorms at Howard is very lax, to say. Any non-students have been able to get into the building, homeless people, people from around the area that don't go to Howard have been able to get into residential dorms and just roam the hallways, harass students. Some students have been robbed outside in their own dorms, and it's really a scary sight.
And you know, it's something you were talking about that I don't even understand. It's how TikTok, they're able to use that app to commit their crimes.
Yes, there's been a trend on TikTok going around where it kind of teaches people how to carjack cars, especially Kias and Hyundais. So kids, especially like teenagers around the area, have been carjacking people for their cars and taking their cars, going on joyrides, and the cars might be found maybe a couple blocks down the street or something, but nothing. They're not doing anything with the cars. They're just taking them for fun.
So now, as a student at Howard, how has these outbreaks of violence, which continues on these campuses, impacted your sense of safety, security, and what measures do you think the university should take to address the issues and ensure the overall well-being of its student, the most important asset to the institution? Well,
for one, I don't feel safe. Two, I do believe that the two entrances on Georgia Ave need to have better policing protocols. We have two entrances, we have two parking lots stationed there that are easily accessible. Anybody can walk on campus. Nobody is asked whether or not they go to the campus or not. Nobody shows proof whether or not they go to the campus. It's become a point where you don't have to just worry about older people. We're also worried about people who are 15 and 16 years old running around at 2 o'clock in the morning, stabbing students, carjacking cars. It's getting outrageous. And the point that I'm getting at is, when is it enough?
But it sounds as if these criminals, these kids and some of these adults know that there is just absolutely no consequences for their behavior. They can just run roughshod like the animal kingdom. Take what they want, violate what they want, and if they have to stab and kill, so be it.
They're running our school.
Mm-hmm.
But how?
I don't understand. We even have, just like she said about homeless, we have Douglas Building. There are 2 known homeless people who stay there approximately probably 3 nights out the week.
3? So they make this their home Trinity?
Yes, I haven't actually heard of this, but apparently I have heard of many homeless people breaking into student buildings, especially residential dorms, being caught like in stairwells and just kind of almost camping out.
So, what I don't understand, has the university in any kind of way addressed your concerns, Trinity?
They've tried to increase security around residential dorms, having students have an app on their phone where they have to scan in, and then putting security at the front desk to really check for student IDs. But there's really no security around these back entrances or side doors. And for commuter students, there aren't too many specified parking garages where our cars will definitely be safe. And if there are, parking on campus has become super expensive, especially with the rise of tuition. I think parking on campus for one semester is around $1,600.
You know, if I'm a parent, what is Howard's tuition a year, Trinity?
Howard's tuition a year is a little over $25,000, I believe.
Listen, go ahead, Nhiya.
It's approximately, and I know this because I pay cash, it's approximately $34,000 not living on campus.
$34,000. I'm paying this university $34,000, and I'm a parent, and that my child is there to learn, and you cannot protect their well-being. What are your parents saying, Trinity?
My parents are always super concerned about my safety on campus, especially as a commuter student. They're always, urging me to park my cars in very well-lit areas, especially if I'm on campus late at night, or keep sticking to the buddy system, like walking to my car, to my vehicle with my friends. But my parents do definitely worry about my safety as they hear about the rise in crime around campus.
You know, Kevin, who runs our social media, is also a student at Howard, and he just communicated to me, living off campus, the tuition is $42,000. That's almost $50,000 a year. In your opinion, Nhiya, what factors may have contributed to the rise in violence at Howard universities, and how can students, faculty, and the administration work together to promote a safe and secure environment?
Well, the rise in crime around all universities is nationwide, and I think the factor to that would be lack of funding, lack of programs for these young kids, because as we know today, the crime that happened 3 days ago was 2 15-year-olds and 1 16-year-old. These are not grown men, and it happened at 1 o'clock in the morning. They should have been asleep, ready for school the next day, but instead they was out committing 13 crimes against people who were actually at school and trying to further their education and get a degree.
Now, Trinity, I think I know the answer to this. It's a violation of the school policy if you bring some kind of weapon to protect yourself. Mm-hmm. You can't even protect yourself.
Yeah, that's true. We're not allowed to have our own weapons on campus for, I feel like, safety reasons, but it definitely does bring a rise in tension and vulnerability for students.
You know, I am just so flabbergasted because later on in the show, our topic is about crime. Let me ask you, Nhiya, what is the profile of those committing these crimes?
The profile, sad to say, it is young black men.
Young black men?
Young black men who should be looking forward to furthering their education at Howard University, but instead they rather attack those that are furthering their education. And it's sad. My question, though, is for somebody 15 and 16 years old to be out at 1 o'clock in the morning, where's your parents? Why was there not missing police reports? And again, why are the police who are stationed at Howard and security guards who are 24 hours at that not making sure that our campus is safe?
So do you think if young white kids, males, were coming from other sectors of the city, not part of the university system, and they were doing the attacking and violating and disrupting and threatening lives, do you think Howard would have a different perspective on this? Do you think this would have changed much quicker?
I think so.
I'm not quite sure. I feel like if we were young white students at a white university, maybe it would be taken more seriously, or our safety would be more of a concern. But just the lack of funding and lack of security at Howard is definitely showing.
What do you mean lack of funding? You pay $40-some thousand a year. There's no lack of funding. What are you talking about?
It's the lack of protocol.
What are you talking funding?
I don't even blame Howard. I blame the police department, because what is the police protocol for when they are on our campus? Because they shouldn't have 6 stationed outside of Crampton. You should have 6 stationed outside the 2 entrances on Georgia Ave.
But why do these young kids commit these crimes? What is it? Why is this rise in juvenile crime? Have you thought about it?
I've been thinking it's a lot to do with the lack of structure for students that are in their teenage years. I know a lot of after-school programs really focus towards students that are 12 and 13 years old, but that kind of care kind of drops off once they get into their later teen years. And a lot of kids are just turning to different things that don't really fuel them or bring them up for success.
Are they uneducated, Nhiya? Is it a lack of education, not being taught morals and values, respecting your neighbor, respecting your neighbor's property?
A lack of structure in the home, but I think also lack of people reaching out to the younger communities. We don't have, I remember when I was growing up, there was always a program that was there to support me, to help me get through, to help me to whether or not it was that I needed to be at a program so I could eat throughout the day, or whether or not I needed to be at a program so that my parents could go to work. But nowadays, there isn't people who are older who are looking down like, okay, we need to sit here and structure our young community, especially our young black community, because they don't have this structure at home. That's not a focus today.
Yeah, we're going to take a break and come back with Trinity and Nhiya. I'm Armstrong Williams. Don't go away. So Nhiya and Trinity, this is something I just received from Kevin. He said there have been many gun robbings for the last 6 years on and near the campus. There are projects right across the street from where the sophomore dorm is located. A lot of these criminals live in public housing units right there. And one of his friends, listen to this, tried to get his wallet, he got his wallet stolen. He tried to get it back, and it was stolen by some middle schooler. When he went to the middle schooler to try to get his wallet back, the middle schooler proceeded to beat him even more and take the remainder of his belongings. Does this sound familiar to you?
I have not heard of this.
I haven't heard this story either, but I have heard stories of students from the middle school on campus like stealing vehicles. There's a video that went viral on social media a couple months ago of some students stealing a vehicle right outside of our health science library on campus.
Talk about, she mentioned social media. Talk about the overall impact of social media on their values, Nhiya.
Social media is creating more followers than leaders. As people try to rise their following on social media, they also become followers in the real world. A lot of them are seeing trends, and then they go out and implicate it in the real world. Just like how she stated, somebody created a TikTok robbing a car and just joyriding.
Trinity, obviously, it sounds as though they are repeat offenders. Are they ever arrested? Are any of these kids ever brought to justice?
I'm sure some are arrested. I'm honestly not sure if there have been any arrests made based on the armed robberies or carjackings that have been going on campus. So I actually can't answer that question.
Why don't you protest? I mean, if you're paying this kind of money, until you put safety measures in place to protect us, I'm not going to class and you're not taking my money. Because obviously, they're isolated. I bet you're not going to hear about how professors and faculties and president going through these same kinds of situations. So why should they leave their students vulnerable?
Well, faculty has gated parking. So that's why we don't hear about faculty being robbed. They have gated parking, and students do not, which we should have gated parking as well.
So this has become an elite system. They protect the professors, but not the students.
Basically, if you're not paying that extra $1,600 a semester to park your car within the parking garages, on top of the already $42,000 that we're paying a year, then you're left to park your car on the streets, and it's fair game to the rest of the university. They tell us what safety precautions they want us to follow, and if we don't, then it's up to us.
You know, Leonard Snipes and Leon Spears and others will be joining us to talk about crime, but I want to ask both of you, as students who are well educated, come from very solid backgrounds, many people listen to this conversation, and these kids that you're describing, they see them as the victims. They see these young black kids who have been tainted and harmed by this thing they call racism, and they make excuses for their behavior. Well, they didn't have a father in the household. Well, they grew up poor. Well, they didn't have the same options. Are we making excuses and becoming enablers to this kind of behavior, Nhiya?
To an extent, and I love how you mentioned that because I grew up poor. I did not grow up with two parents in a household, but I'm still a student at Howard University, extending my education and trying to extend my career. So therefore, it's not an excuse for what you didn't have, because what you lack, you can make up for. And if you choose not to, that's a self-choice. Yes, we do have a lot of things that impact us, but those are not, just because somebody doesn't view you the way you want to be viewed does not mean you stop your life and disrupt someone else's.
Trinity?
I could attest to that as well. I definitely think there are some excuses being made, but I definitely think it is up to us as a community to reach and pour back out into these children. Just like I mentioned earlier, there aren't too many programs or after-school things for students in their teenage years to do, and nobody's really reaching that hand out to them. So while I do think they should be held accountable for their actions and the crimes that they're committing, I also do think we have to think about the systemic implications of what all they're going through as well.
What do you think they're going through?
Just living in poverty, living in areas where there are high crime and you feel like you don't have any other options. That's very real for some students. And I've talked to some kids that live in these areas that are doing well for themselves, but they see their friends that aren't doing as well, or they get led on the wrong path by someone that definitely didn't have their best interest in heart. It's easy to get lost.
But did you give them permission to steal, to stab, to rape, to kill? How do you navigate this balance?
It's definitely a balance, and I definitely don't give anyone permission to steal, rob, rape, anything, trespass, anything. I definitely feel like these students should be held accountable for the actions that they are taking. And parents as well should be held accountable for not keeping a sharper eye on their kids, not making sure that they're being led the proper way and being led up to achieve success and further their education for their careers.
How does this impact your academic studies in the classroom, Nhiya?
Well, like you said that we should riot. I don't have the time to riot.
I didn't say riot, protest.
Okay, well, protest.
No, not riot.
I don't have the time to protest.
Yes.
I barely have time to email because I already have all my own schoolwork that I need to do, that I have to focus on. And as far as I'm concerned, I can't focus on what's happening outside the campus. As much as it's impacting me, all I can keep doing is trying every day.
And you, Trinity?
I definitely wish I had more time to protest, more time to organize, but just the weight of school life and then trying to balance other careers and internships as well is definitely like #1 priority. I feel like I do take a deep breath when I finally do get into secured buildings on campus, because there's no longer that fear of, oh my gosh, am I gonna get grabbed on my way walking to this building?
What do you mean when you say secured buildings?
Some buildings on campus, like student buildings where we have classes, do have security in the front. They check your ID. They're locked after certain hours, and only students that have a certain app on their phone can get into the building. So some buildings are secured.
Well, why can't you have this for students?
It is for students.
All students.
I think it would probably be better if we had it around all campus.
Yeah,
Why
around
not?
all the buildings on campus are not secured. I think that's one issue. And then some of the other entrances to campus, like on the backside of campus, where we have like our journalism building, or we have some other dorms and lunch halls that are back there. They're not as protected from the outside neighborhoods, but some of the buildings themselves are secured.
But I'm willing, in your tuition, if someone said, Nhiya, a Trinity, you had to pay an extra $7 each to make sure that the campus is secure, for your livelihood, you would pay that.
Yes.
I definitely would. I mean, I'm already paying an extra $4,000 next semester for not sure what, but
That part.
I would pay for more security around school.
Yeah, you know, I don't see why this is not the #1 priority for the university. Because you know what? You know why? It's only a matter of time before someone loses their life, or someone is so traumatized they can't return to campus, Nhiya. It's a matter of time.
It's true. We need to focus on the border right now. Well,
The border?
The border of Howard, we can definitely focus on. There is about 4 entrances. There is, well, 6 in total, 2 on each side, 2 down bottom. Those can be we can have cops stationed there to at least implicate. I don't mind if a cop came up to me and asked me, "Hey, can you please show me a Howard badge? Can you please show me something that indicates that you belong on this campus?" I would feel safe.
You know, I want to get into this before I say goodbye to both. Hey, listen, both of you make me so proud. I mean, the maturity, the education, and the fairness and the spirit of what you expressed today. I mean, it's a fine reflection of your parents. But what is happening to our young black men? What's happening to them?
There's no focus on our young black men. We have more focus on young black women than we do young black men.
Yes, I think that's obviously, it's portrayed through Howard as well. I mean, Howard is a majority, it's not all girls, but the majority of the population at Howard is black women. And you can see the lack of focus on black men and their education being portrayed at our universities as well.
And what are some of the things that, because I know you know a lot of these men, whether they're involved in crime or not, many of them are doing very well. What is it that they need that is missing? Because it seems like they're so broken. They did not grow up with the love that I received and you received from your parents, someone always being there for you, knowing that they love you and they support you. There's just so much brokenness in society. And then what happens is when they don't get an education and they don't have real skills at the end of the day and they can't provide for themselves, then they find themselves in petty crimes, then drugs, then petty theft. And then they find themselves incarcerated. What do we do to help these young brothers?
Exactly what you stated. They need somebody, they need to feel as if somebody wants to help them. They need to feel that somebody wants them. They don't get that at home. They've never got that at home. Most black men do not have a father figure, so they don't have the structure that needs to be implicated at a young age on how to navigate throughout the world as a young black man or as a young man. And that is what is needed. Also, we should target how young black men nobody focuses on what they actually want out of life. They focus on more of what women want, but they don't focus on what men want.
You know, I gotta share this with you because Anthony is still sending a lot of messages to me. He said, talk about the fear of being groped. A lot of instances of random men going onto campus and groping women, are masturbating in front of women students when they walk into classrooms. That's true?
Yes. So
masturbating?
Actually, if you go to McDonald's, on the side of McDonald's, in between McDonald's and Towers, there is a line of men lined up in cars waiting for women to walk by. Not to mention, these are not women. These are young adults. They are 17, 18. Some of them aren't even of age yet, and they wait and ask, oh, hey, baby, can you come get in my car? You want to take a ride? It's disgusting. It is disgusting.
Yeah, even the men inside the McDonald's that wait around for Howard students or female students to walk in, they're harassing them as well. So it's definitely a scary thought.
Men coming out of the barbershop right across from SOB. Hey, baby, I got a fine cup. You want to come with me? No, I don't.
Oh,
no,
my goodness. And then finally, Kevin also shared that you all have had an active shooter on campus due to the lack of borders, and teachers have been held hostage.
Yes.
What?
The violence is getting outrageous on Howard
No,
University.
I just said that. Kevin is a student, and Kevin works for us. He runs our social media. He was a student. So this stuff is real.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very real. It's very scary. You never know who the next victim might be or where you might become a victim. So it's just a scary thought.
I'm traumatized just hearing this. Listen, Trinity, Nhiya, thank you both so much for your courage to come out today and tell the story. And we'll be back. What? Turn your mic on in the back, pull it out and turn it on. And welcome back to the broadcast. I'm sure both of my guests have been listening to this conversation. I mean, it's mind-boggling, Leonard, what's happening on these college campuses.
It's disgusting. But what Trinity and Nhiya said is happening all throughout the country. And you're hearing from people all throughout the United States. You're hearing the same thing. that things have gotten out of hand, that women cannot walk down the street without being hassled. We have a 50% increase in urban homicides, a 50% increase since 2019, 36% increase in aggravated assaults. If you go and take a look at enforcement in terms of vehicles, a 40-year high in terms of pedestrians being killed, a 20% increase in the fatality rate. Why? Because we're not enforcing our laws. We're giving the wrong messages to people who commit harm.
Leon, you live in the district. You heard the story. I mean, rape, active shooter, masturbating, groping.
I mean, Armstrong, it's sad, and I'm a proud graduate of Howard University. I went to Howard University, and I have 2 bachelors from Howard University. And what the young ladies were testifying to is ultimately just terrible. I think that back in the day, the policies were different. And there's a new chief of police at Howard University, Alvin Lyde, and he's just going to, revamp the whole security situation in D.C.
Joshua Crawford, does crime pay?
It certainly seems to these days, between a lack of enforcement as a result of the defund the police movement and then some of these prosecutors who are neglecting to take cases. You're seeing not only crimes of violence increase, but crimes that literally pay. These smash and grab robberies have increased dramatically. And the people that are hurt the most by this are the people who live in the communities that are the least able to tolerate and deal with this.
How do the financial gains achieved through criminal activities, Joshua, compared to the stability and benefits of pursuing traditional lawful careers?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that people don't really understand, that in truth, the average street-level drug dealer makes less than minimum wage. So you're better off going to work for Home Depot or McDonald's than you are selling dope on the street. You're better off doing that than you are participating in some of these rings that steal goods from Walmarts and Targets and places like that. But the money comes quick. It comes relatively easily. And a lot of folks who have never sort of known anything else get lured into these lifestyles because they appear to come with a lot of financial benefits, but very rarely come with the actual benefits that a 9-to-5 job do.
Leon, considering the risk of legal repercussions and damage to personal reputation, is the short-term financial success of criminal behavior worth the potential long-term consequences?
I don't agree with that at all, Armstrong. I know that the recent policies for MPD, Metropolitan Police Department in D.C., there are very, very low, if not any, bail regulations. So there's no bail for youth, and they have no set consequences. They go out, they rampage the city, and as you just said, they harassed your previous guests while attending Howard University. And so it just needs to go to what are the resources going to be given to in regard to security. And as again, you were talking about Howard University is an open campus. George Washington University is an open campus. American University is an open campus. And you obviously see there are differences amongst the security of
not the same
the
issues,
students.
what you're saying.
Not the same issues.
Why?
I went to Howard University. I went to George Washington University. So,
but why does it happen at Howard and not the other universities? I'm trying to get what you convey here.
The resources that are committed to the security for the students.
But these kids are paying $30,000 and $40,000 a year. What do you mean?
George Washington University has been renownedly the most expensive university in the country. You're talking about $120,000, $130,000 4-year education, and so you're talking about $160,000, $200,000 postgraduate degrees, and these kids are secure. But again, open campus, you're talking about the responsibility of the city police department protecting students on campus, specifically the security of campus personnel.
But why should money be an issue protecting a child's life? That should be your first responsibility. If your daughter or son, you want that child protected. Why does it have to always come back down to money, Leonard?
Look, we're telling the violent offenders out there that they're probably going to get away with their crimes. And if you take a look at the statistics, they are getting away with their crimes. Arrests have plummeted in the United States. It's just like falling off of a cliff because we've basically told law enforcement to back off. We've told law enforcement, don't be proactive, don't get out there, just respond to calls and, patrol the communities but proactivity, which has been found by the National Academy of Sciences to be the most effective way of controlling crime. We've backed off of that because of all the controversy over police use of force. So we've gone too far. The message that we're giving, not only in Washington, D.C., but throughout the United States, is violent criminals will probably get away with it, and the stats show that they are. If you take a look at arrests for homicides, aggravated assaults, rapes, they're all down, especially in urban areas throughout the United States. So we have created a problem that we, at the moment, cannot overcome unless communities and law enforcement come together.
So, Joshua, how can strengthening economic opportunities and social support systems discourage the belief that crime is a viable path to financial success for some individuals or even these groups?
Yeah, the first and most important thing is to make the community itself more safe. One of the things that we know from the technical literature on this is that when a community becomes more violent, the economic opportunity in that community falls off a cliff. The economic mobility among the bottom quartile falls off a cliff. Private businesses leave, private businesses don't expand, there's fewer opportunities. And so the first thing you have to do is make that community safe, and you do that through a combination of resources and enforcement. This has been referenced several times at this point, but arrests and prosecutions have fallen off a cliff in our largest cities. Philadelphia has reduced criminal sentencings by 70% in the last several years to their lowest place in modern history, at the same time that homicides have increased 78%. And so there's far less enforcement than there was in previous years. And it's not just sort of piddly little things that we're letting go. There are DAs all across this country that are not prosecuting gang crimes, not prosecuting felons in possession of firearm cases, serious violent cases that have been reduced because of ideology.
So, Leon, what about the narrative that there are some judges, prosecutors, and DAs that are on the take, they get paid off by these drug dealers? That's part of the problem. You have dirty cops who, this younger generation realize they're dirty cops. Sometimes when they do a drug bust and there's money and other valuables, they skim some off the top. And this contributes to why you have this rise in juvenile crime, why they're so quickly put back on the streets, because the system is just corrupt.
I don't know specifically those cases, but I can vouch for the Metropolitan Police Chief, Robert Conti. He is a soft-spoken individual and just phenomenal leader. And so he's cleaning up MPD, and he has no tolerance for that type of behavior.
We understand, but what about across the country? We're not just talking about here.
Well, there are trends. There are trends, but again, financial resources have to be implemented. And so decisions that are tough have to be made in boardrooms across the country in regard to how we're going to spend the upcoming financial resources that we have. So you say, oh, okay, we have to spend couple $1,000s on security when we need books or we need a new renovation of the cafeteria. And those difficult conversations are had by community leaders, city hall members, members of statutes and committees. But again, those are tough decisions. But security is just terrible in D.C. right now, only from the standpoint from a lot of these kids have feel no repercussions from no bail policies, and they just go out. They know they're going to be arrested, they're going to be caught, they'll be released in a couple hours, and then they continue. So unless there's a big hammer that comes down, it will continue.
So here's my question to you, Leonard, tonight. What are the areas in the country that has the formula and the cooperation from the police, the community, and all strategic partners where crime is not an issue, and why? It's not right.
You go to my website at crimeinamerica.net. I have a list of the cities that are doing well, and I have a list of the cities that aren't doing well. Basically, you have cities who have a concerted effort between law enforcement and communities. They give out a very straightforward message that we're not going to tolerate your behavior. Some of these police chiefs and sheriffs and community leaders are out there screaming this every single day, that if you commit crimes in our city, we are going to come after you and we're going to prosecute you. And they say it openly and they say it proudly. They're giving the message that your behavior will not be tolerated. The problem with the crime problem in the United States is that we're telling people that it is tolerated, and for many of our cities, it is tolerated. You go back to Brandon Scott, the mayor of the city of Baltimore. We've got to go back to the old days, quote unquote, in terms of enforcing juvenile curfews. We've got to go back to the old days. I think, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of ethical, community-oriented, proactive policing, we've got to go back to the old days. And I think the mayor of the city of Baltimore is correct.
Maybe this younger generation of mayors does not have the kind of brass knuckles of cracking down on crime and punishing these young people and telling them that this is not going to be tolerated. Because if you had leaders like Conti and the old Giuliani, they would know their consequences. If you commit a crime in my community, you're going to be taken down and you're not going to go back on the street. I just think that law enforcement is so overwhelmed, lack of moral, they're losing morality, they don't feel appreciated, they arrest these people, they're right back on the street before the jail cell closes. I just think all these things in the mix continues to contribute to the rise in juvenile crimes and the deaths. I'm Armstrong Williams. We'll be back. If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com. For millions of Americans, LASIK eye surgery is seen as a ticket to a better life without the need for corrective lenses like glasses or contacts. Yet, I must tell you, for some, it has turned their lives into a living nightmare, forcing people to live with severe, relentless eye pain, making life practically unlivable. I must tell you, the sad reality of LASIK is that when something goes wrong, it can go wrong real fast. Studies show that the success rate for LASIK hovers around 99%, yet, as it turns out, as reported by the New York Times, many are authored by surgeons with financial ties to manufacturers that make the lasers. You get it? There currently exist support groups for people who have had complications, sadly. Some of these people take their own lives as a result of their loss of their ability to live a normal life without constant pain, while others are forced to quit working, become unable to drive, and are even unable to perform normal, everyday activities. Have you gotten LASIK? Do you experience any of these issues? I've talked to so many people since we started reporting on this, and their stories are absolutely horrifying. I'm going to come back to Joseph. How has the defund the police movement influenced public safety and crime rates across various regions and the country since its implementation? I'm not hearing him. Are you here?
I don't have them.
Okay, I think I heard you. Go ahead.
What you have seen is this inverse relationship between policing and crime. So the old adage is basically more police, less crime. And that's a truism as it relates to just the number of officers you have on the street. But what those officers are doing, as has been talked about, that proactive policing is also critically important. And so the defund the police movement has been successful, and I use that word pejoratively here, in sort of two ways. The first has been these jurisdictions that have actually defunded the police, reduced police budgets. But the other is that this movement has created an environment in which officers are leaving the profession voluntarily to find other work, are leaving high crime jurisdictions for low crime jurisdictions, or are not entering the profession whatsoever, or are less active once they're in the profession. And so what you've seen all across the country is that law enforcement numbers are declining, and that the officers that are staying are less active than they were before. And what that has meant is more crime.
Leonard, in what ways has reallocated resources from law enforcement agencies to social programs and alternative community service impacted the effectiveness of crime prevention and the response?
Well, Armstrong, most of that has been rescinded. The cities are going overboard throughout the United States, and they're saying to themselves, we made a mistake. So any defunding has been pretty much corrected in cities throughout the country. The money has gone back to law enforcement. The problem is that we've lost tens of thousands of police officers per the Bureau of Labor Statistics and endless media articles throughout the country. And cops are basically saying to themselves, the ones who left and the ones who are in the process of leaving, dude, if you're going to disrespect me, if you're going to say your profession's not worth funding, if your profession is corrupt or brutal or whatever, instead of looking at the miscreants who committed crimes and indiscretions, the message went out to all police officers. There's something wrong with you. There's something's wrong with your profession. And I've talked to multiple families that have basically told their loved ones in law enforcement, get out and get out now. If they are going to be that terrible to you, then why stay in law enforcement? And there are police officers throughout the country asking themselves that same question. So the defund the police movement has resulted in tens of thousands more of lives taken, injured, raped, robbed, ruined for the rest of their lives. Through reform, we have thousands. Take a look at the traffic accidents, the fatalities, the pedestrian fatalities, because we're not writing tickets anymore because we told cops to stop doing traffic enforcement. So tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, probably millions in terms of economic development, in terms of jobs. We have basically destroyed cities throughout the United States.
Leon, what do you say to the woke community that the rise in crime and all that happens today goes back to firearms and people's ability to carry guns and AR-15s and the Second Amendment?
I think it's foolishness. And a lot of times, people that are quote unquote woke, they are awakened when that crime comes to their doorstep. And so they usually have, sadly, second vision when, the crime affects them. And so a lot of these people that have these views that, no guns, there should be no guns, they fail to realize that they're the same people in private settings that have come to me, asked me for training, have their own purchase of firearms going on, but they don't want to publicly say that because it's not socially accepted or there's a new trend to be politically correct. But the bottom line is that you have a right to defend yourself, and it's nothing to do with the effectiveness of what you believe socially and upbringing of children. You have a right to defend yourself, and the association of blame in the Second Amendment is just nonsense.
Joshua Crawford, you know, you're a criminal justice expert and you're a part of Young Voices. What's missing in this conversation that we don't belabor enough?
Yeah, so the first thing is that any given city, it's a remarkably small percentage of your population that is driving this violence. It's typically about 0.5% of your population, your city's population, only about 5% of offenders that are responsible for more than 50% of your violence. So it's not as if the American public overall has begun to run amok or become more criminally inclined. It's a very small number of people. And we can focus on those people. We can focus resources on those people. And most importantly, and often missing from the conversation, we can focus enforcement on those individuals. There is no meaningful citywide reduction in crime that has taken place anywhere in the country without law enforcement, without enforcement, without prosecutions, without incarceration. But at the same time, if we start investing in young people early and earlier, because by the time you will see a 14, 15, 16-year-old who has participated in a carjacking, it is far more difficult to get that young person back onto a positive life course than it is to take an 11 or 12-year-old and keep them on a positive life course. So focus on early interventions as it relates to juveniles younger than you think you need to, and then recognize that you're going to have to do some of the hard stuff. You're going to have to enforce the law as it relates to adults who choose to repeatedly and systematically break the law.
Leonard, what else should we focus on?
We need to focus on making sure society understands its responsibilities to itself and community members, their responsibility to their communities. Criminology 101. It's communities that control crime. It's not law enforcement. It's communities that control crime. It's society that controls crime through the messages that we give to younger people. If we tell younger people cops are not going to no longer be aggressive, we're not going to no longer going to incarcerate you, we're going to give you low bail or no bail, that's sending a message basically saying that repercussions are no longer there. We have to, as a community, as a city, as a country, reinforce the fact that this is behavior that we will not tolerate, and that message has got to go out repeatedly over and over and over again.
Leonard, Leon, what needs to happen within the family structure?
Clearly, leadership, two-parent household, but the male in the home is critical. To be a leader, to be financially stable, and to really provide guidance for the children, especially male children. It's just a cycle. It could be a negative cycle if there's no fatherly role, no mentor in the home, because again, the child is going to learn either from the home or from the street. And so you want to have that moral compass in the home, so the child knows what's right and wrong, and there are consequences for poor decisions. A lot of these kids, even in urban settings, they really don't know what right or wrong is, or even if they do, they have no fear of any consequences. They go to jail, they come out, they have no idea what the repercussions of their actions will affect job placement, educational opportunities. They have no clue. And then they're now a felon. They can't get positions that they so desire. And so that all could have been thwarted with proper leadership from the home.
You know, there's one thing that's obvious from the day's discussion, especially when you go back to our conversation with Trinity and Nhiya, is that young men are losing respect for themselves, so therefore they can't respect women. When you talk about groping, and of all the stuff that we've read and it's been reported about sexual harassment, and you talk about masturbation, I mean, it's almost a gutter system of values. It tells you that somewhere they're getting their values. It's not from the church. And I pray it's not in the family. So you have to ask yourself, what is raising these kids today? What makes a young boy think that he can go out and grope someone and disrespect himself to expose himself as if there's nothing to it? Our generation, this would have been unthinkable. So we ask ourselves, what responsibility do we have? Or can we ever change this? Because in my opinion, I don't see the situation getting better, unfortunately. I only see it getting progressively worse. I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong. But the signs don't point that way. I want to thank all our guests for joining us for this edition of the Armstrong Williams Show in WJLA 24/7. God bless you and enjoy the rest of what is left of your day.